Imagine if you're in a relationship and the new rules state now you cannot leave this person, but the person can mess you over 4 times, up to 4 months, and you still can't do anything. What would you do? In this video, I'll show you what to do. Guys, the Renters' Rights Bill 2024. So how are we going to avoid this big problem, and how are we going to avoid, as my analogy said a minute ago, getting stuck in a relationship, a one-sided relationship with a tenant who's constantly using this new rights bill to take advantage of your business? The first thing I would mention is, before I tell you the loopholes and how to get around all of this, is you need to remember one historical fact. In general, no landlord has done badly under Labour, and the reason being is inflation. Now guys, you do make thousands in rent roll, and the whole point of being a landlord is to get rental income. But believe me, you'll make millions out of capital gain increases, the property price increases. And under inflation, and under Labour governments which are historically inflationary, asset prices do rise quite considerably. I built my portfolio under the coalition Labour government, and I can tell you now that pretty much every house I bought has more than doubled in value, and I've made more money through this, and I've remortgaged several times to build a portfolio, as well as rental income. And rental income also increases under an inflationary environment, as Warren Buffett said. So now let's get into it, guys. So the other thing I would mention as well is, and I knew it would come out in the wash, what is the point of all this? All the landlords are saying, look, they can't do this. All the landlords are going to sell up and leave. Of course they're not going to do this. Well, they are doing it, guys. So no Section 21 anymore. You can't evict a tenant unless you are selling, and you have to prove it via a survey and estate agency reports. And if in fact you don't sell it, there's a prohibition on renting it again in the next 12 months. So that's coming in. Pets, they're allowed pets, which is fine. Rent increases via property tribunal. So you can't just go and increase the rent. They can literally delay it, go to tribunal, and if the tribunal agrees with you, because it's such under market rent and you want to bring it up as usual, as reasonable to market rents, well, guess what? The rent only takes effect after the tribunal's decision, and it doesn't get backdated, so it's a perfect delaying tactic. You've got increased red tape, PRS database, so you've got to have to register on the database, 5k fine minimum if you don't. You have to join the Landlords Ombudsman, which is one-sided. Again, it's only for tenants' grievances, which is a bit weird. If it's an ombudsman, it should be both-sided, as in like a consumer rights one, where you complain about a company, the company has a right as well, but apparently in this, you don't. The main one as well being 3 months arrears plus 4 weeks notice. It's basically a free overdraft, guys, okay? So basically what the tenant can now do is not pay rent for 3 months, okay, and then you have to give 28 days notice. Now what they can do, if they're smart, and they will be, obviously, as you know tenants are, especially with all the stuff on the internet and shelter helping them, is they can just reset that clock by paying off 1 month. So they've got a free overdraft basically. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't go for Section 8 anymore because they won't have 3 months arrears. Now you can do that at the moment. Under the current rules, where you're 2 months arrears, you give 14 days notice, they pay off 1 month and the clock resets. But remember, if a tenant consistently does that now, you just use Section 21. Well, guess what, guys? There's no Section 21 anymore, so you're stuck with that. So how do we kind of get around this? Well, one of the things I've been telling landlords, and we've been getting loads of portfolio landlords recently engaging in my consultancy services, quite large portfolios coming to me and going, I need to tidy this up before this act takes place, which is true, and they're built up sizable portfolios, and we're looking at the portfolios, sometimes 15 properties, and we're looking at where the tenants are asking for stuff which is unnecessary, like I want new carpet. You know, these tenants, when the new rights come in, are going to take advantage even more. And I'm not saying don't put new carpet if it's damaged, but perfectly reasonable property just been refurbed and asking for new carpets. These are the kind of tenants you want to be giving Section 21 to now. We're also getting landlords who are going, look, I want to swap to social housing, I want to let to a corporate let, I don't want to deal with tenants, I want 3 years fixed. Above market rents, we're usually getting LHA rates plus 10%, but the main thing is there's no maintenance, there's no letting fees, and they don't have to contend with any of this. and they're relying on a company, an established company with a director's personal guarantee to pay the rent because it's actually coming from the company. It's just such a crucial thing now, because let's face it, how many tenants are going to provide you with a personal guarantee? Okay, and how many tenants are a company and can demonstrate company accounts and stuff. So I would say try and rent, if you've got properties in good areas, especially city centres, to these providers who are pretty much guaranteed, and then you can fix your income without maintenance, without voids. You don't have a headache of finding new tenants in this environment, and it lets you build your business. That being said, if you've got properties in very, very good areas like I have, you do get good tenants and you can pick and choose. So there's actually, for one property now, there's 20 tenants chasing it where we are, and pretty much around the UK in the cities. So you shouldn't be short of tenants, and you should be choosing the best tenants, obviously the most professional jobs, tenants who are going to care if you take a CCJ against them, okay? So, you know, your doctors, your kind of teachers, that kind of tenant, professional tenants, where it does matter if they do, or bank workers where they get a CCJ, because remember, you can still enforce the debt in court, just not via eviction. You can still get a CCJ in most circumstances. The other thing is we should be setting our rents very, very high now, and it's better to rent at a high level and wait for the property to be filled. So it doesn't rent, it might not rent straight away because it's the highest rent. It's better to wait for the property to rent than to wait in a relationship with a tenant who's not paying. Does that make sense? So you're waiting for the property. It might take, at that higher level, it might take you 3 weeks to rent it, but you'll get the perfect right tenant for that property who's got the funds. And you might get like tenants from abroad. We get a lot of tenants from Hong Kong who pay 12 months in advance, although that's been outlawed now, so they can't even pay in advance, which actually disadvantages the tenants. Most of these measure guys are going to disadvantage the tenants and see a restriction of supply and see their rents go up. But that's the Labour government for you. They'd rather make a wealthier person poorer and make a poorer person poorer, if that makes sense. So they don't really care about the people who are the working class and the, you know, where I'm from, basically how I started. They don't care. They just want the wealthier to be less wealthy. It doesn't matter if the poor as in, you know, the non-property own, non-asset owning people get less wealthy as well. It's a real indication of this government. And another thing that's just come out, just deviating slightly off topic here, and I knew it would come out, is capital gains tax. So if they're doing all this, why are they doing it? Is it to get more money off landlords? Probably not. It's actually to drive landlords away from the market and to let the big operators, the banks, the hedge funds control the market. And what will that mean? Well, guys, if banks and big hedge funds control the market, what do you think is going to happen to rental prices for the average tenant? Forget about us landlords. They're not going to do it and charge less rent than the small landlord, are they? It's going to go up and they're going to control the supply. And the key indication of this is recently been announced, and obviously the budget's pretty soon on the end of October, but it's recently been announced that capital gains tax increases, landlords are going to be exempt, as in it's not going to be increased for landlords selling up. So they're doing all this against landlords, and now they're saying, well, if you're selling your second home or your buy-to-let investments, we're not going to charge you more capital gains tax. It's going to pretty much stay at the same level. This is a clear indication that they want smaller landlords to leave the market by making it easy, making it very, very unappealing to be a landlord through all of this, all the red tape, all the new rules, can't sell, etc. And then going, well, if you want to sell, the capital gains right now is the same, so you might as well sell. Now, guys, why is this? They're not stupid. They're not thinking, you know, everyone's going around going, well, there's not going to be any houses to let. Of course there is. What's going to happen is landlords are going to leave the market, which they already are. 1 in 3 landlords are thinking of selling. And the stock is going to be taken up by big institutional investors who are going to then ramp up the prices for your tenants and control the market. And I'm telling you now, guys, if you're a small landlord, 5 properties or less, stay in the property game, because you're going to benefit from the rent increases and the asset increases. But you've got to be smart. You've got to operate this game as a business now and not as your rookie small-time landlord. You've got to be thinking about all these things. You've got to be choosing the right tenants. No more being lazy going, the estate agent's just rented it for me. I don't even know. They got 700. It's all right. The market rent's 895, but I take 700. No, guys. The reason is not the money. It's the quality of the tenant. So you've got to be really proactive. And as I said, a lot of I'm surprised by the increase of the demand for my consultancy now, and it's all landlords, it's all existing landlords with portfolios coming to me going, what am I doing with this property? What am I doing with this property? And I'm turning around going, the landlord's been lazy there. The estate agent's been lazy there. You under-rented that one. And it's not a problem financially maybe for you because you've accepted the rent. It's not that, it's the tenant quality. Where the nicer properties and the nicer locations get the best tenants, and those tenants are likely to care about CCJs. They're unlikely to do this free overdraft nonsense when they don't pay you. They're unlikely to be difficult. They're unlikely to take you to tribunal if you rent increase. They just want a place to live and they have the money for it. And those are the tenants you want. Brings me on to another point, guys. You need to be buying in prime areas going forward. No more chasing yields in these small towns where sourcing agents advise you to buy in Wales or some village up north where it's like an ex-mining town, because what happens there is the undesirable areas have good yields for a reason, because the tenants are going to be of the lower quality and you're more likely to get these problems. And one of the key things I've been looking at is a large portfolio of landlords come to me, and I've looked through his portfolio. 25% of his properties are in those towns, and he's asking for social housing. Well, we've looked into it. Most of the schemes in those areas don't even exist. They're closed in those certain areas. And then you can only get CIRCO, which is asylum seekers, which he doesn't want, and rightly so. It's buying in the right area to start with. Yes, you wouldn't have got as much yield, but now look at the rents in Manchester, over £1,000 a month. And okay, at the time it wasn't, but one can see that big cities, they always go up. So you don't chase the yields, chase the location, because you've always got multiple letting options. If I don't rent social housing, I rent to students. If I don't rent students, I'll rent to professionals, or I'll rent to an Airbnb operator because it's in Manchester City Centre. If that's a town in South Yorkshire, it's not going to happen, is it? It's just going to be a family, and these issues will then crop up. So guys, remember that. So as I said, we need to start assessing and being proactive in the portfolios, or even guys, if you're new and you want to get into property investment, choose the decent areas. Don't do the little cheeky 50, 60k houses just because it's easy to get all your money out or chase the yield. You're better off spending that bit more, 10k more in terms of your deposit, because remember it's a deposit factor, you're financing it, so it's not going to cost you that much more deposit wise to buy in a better area, so you don't have these issues. And obviously those areas go up more anyway and are more resilient if there's a market downturn. I've been through it all, guys. I've had properties in central Manchester and I've had properties in other areas. The ones that recovered first after the crash was obviously Manchester, as you know. So the bidding wars, you're not allowed to set rent and then let tenants overbid for properties now. To be honest, how is that going to be policed? Because when I put my rent on open rent, if someone rings me up and offers more, of course I'm going to take it. But with estate agents, they're not allowed and the calls are recorded. So guys, if I were you, I'd be forcing the agents to put the rent that much higher, making your properties, maybe furnish it, make it a bit more homely just to justify that extra. But you're not doing it for the extra money you're doing it for the tenant quality. So set your rent highs. Remember, try and buy in good areas so you can rent to social housing. Anything that reduces your risk now, your tenant risk, is going to help your business and is going to put you ahead of other landlords who are not as clued up. We are operating this now at the highest level possible. We're operating this like a hedge fund or corporate Lloyds Bank that wants to be the biggest landlord in the UK. We need to operate on that level. So all of these need to be risk factored and taken into account. No more laziness, no more buying a house and giving it to an estate agent and just letting them do what they want. Can't be happening, guys, if you want to grow your portfolio. Now, the other thing is, why do hedge funds, if all of this is coming in and it's not attractive to be a landlord and 1 in 3 landlords are selling, why are Lloyds Bank, BlackRock, which is the biggest hedge fund in the world, private equity, why are all these companies, the bigger ones, looking to invest in UK property? Why is there £1 billion fund just from BlackRock itself? Why does Lloyds Bank want to own 50,000 rental homes? They can obviously see that asset prices will increase under a Labour government and so will rent. There's a fortune to be made, guys. They can invest in any industry they want. If they wanted to tomorrow, me and you couldn't start an energy company, but they could. That's the size of them. If they wanted to start even a an oil company, they could. They've got that much money. Why are they investing in UK property assets? And why is all this taking place? I think they do have lobbyists. They employ professional lobbyists to lobby the government. They go to ministers. They have cozy meeting with ministers. They dictate. They're the puppet masters. They're the bankers control the world analogy, which you saw when Kwasi Kwarteng did the budget under Liz Truss, and it all went pear-shaped. Guys, that was because the bankers didn't like it. It's as simple as that. If you read into the interviews given by the ex-minister afterwards, and if you look around, you'll know that is because the bankers had a bad reaction to it. They control the economy and they control the politicians. And they want to invest in UK land and property. That should give you a clear indication not to sell. It's not a case of selling, it's a case of we're here for the long run, we're going to make loads of money, millions, guys. If you're investing now and you follow me over the next 5 years, you will make millions. But you need to be fast, you need to be proactive, you need to not be an amateur, be really switched on, be ahead of the game, negate all these risks, get your rent up here, continuously buy, wait, be patient, hold on, and you will do what I did 10, 14 years ago when I started building my portfolio. It's a really exciting time for landlords, especially if you're a new investor. It's not so much an exciting time if you're a landlord and done things wrong, because you're having to come to me or other advisors and adjust your portfolio, but still, I mean, most landlords who come to me are at least $500,000 in profit. So that just shows you guys, and they're not even that old. So that's what I would say on this. You know my loopholes. You know now to set your rents high, make your house a little bit nicer, maybe furnish it. How much is it going to cost you? £1,000 from IKEA to justify that rent? Not to get the rent, but to set the meter here. So when you also increase the rent, you go from here to here, not from here to here, if that makes sense. Second of all, you get better quality tenants. Buy in good areas, as I said, city centres now. No more market towns relying on local rents or Serco. Serco, most of the schemes are closed anyway. That's how bad it is. So that needs to be said. You want to buy in an area where you've got multiple options and there's multiple people fighting for a rental property, not in a small town where, you know, the tenant's family are going to rent the house next door. It's going to be very difficult to control that. And the other thing, guys, is I'm seeing a lot of landlords who are panicking now. They're saying, oh, EPC might change in 2030, right? I'm not buying these properties, I'm paying more for it, or I'm not buying at all. Guys, for a start, any EPC officer will give you an EPC for 250 quid, okay? It's quite well known among landlords. But forget about all that. This rule about EPC is going to get kicked down, the can's going to get kicked down the road again and again, as it already has. Even if it doesn't, guys, you'll make so much from buying now that it doesn't really matter. So the landlords who I'm working for now, some of them are like, oh, I'm not buying an EPCD. We're cleaning up, we're buying EPCD, E-properties. It doesn't make a difference. We're refurbing them anyway sometimes and then getting the money back out. So none of that, guys. No scaremongering amongst, you know, you can't do this, can't do that. That's exactly what they want. That's what the system wants. It wants to get rid of the small landlords who made money and become wealthy. Labour doesn't like wealth. It only likes wealth when it suits them, which is their own friends in the big companies like Lloyds Bank, like the hedge funds, who can be good corporate landlords. They also did a survey and they found out that 55% of young tenants would rather rent from a big company than a small landlord. But the thing is, guys, they're going to be paying more for it. Now, if you stay in the market and you're one of the small landlords, you know, a portfolio of 50 houses, you're also going to command the same rent because the rent is uniform. It doesn't matter who the landlord is. The facilities, yes, or the quality of the house, but if you've got two houses on the same road and one's owned by Lloyds Bank and one's owned by yourself, if you're a professional landlord, you're going to get the same rent. So that just shows, guys, the money to be made in this market. It's made me millions and it's going to make you millions, but you need to now. When I was operating, all this wasn't in there. It was a lot easier to be a landlord, granted. But easy businesses don't make money, okay? And the reason being is more competition. It's like when we used to do the auctions, there used to be, you know, 3 or 4 bids per rundown property. Now, you put a property in auction if it's run down because you know it's going to get more than the market rates from an estate agent. There's no bargains because there's too many people. Homes under the hammer effect. Now, all of this will put a moat around your business, and putting a moat around your castle or business means that it's harder for somebody else now with all of this to come in. So what's going to happen is when the small landlords sell and the Lloyds banks and the hedge funds come into the market, if you then want to be a landlord, you know, an 18-year-old in 10 years' time wants to be a landlord, it's going to be such a hard business to get into, right? And they're going to be protected. You know, the big operators are going to be protected because of all this legislation, red tape, all the rules, and they're going to be creaming it in. So that just shows you that this is not actually a bad thing, guys. The more difficult it is to start a business in a certain sector, the more money there is to be made. Me and you can't just go and start an oil company tomorrow or a water company. They make millions because there's so much legislation. You need to get a government license, you need to lobby the government, etc., etc., etc. You need to buy the land, infrastructure investments, deals with the council, etc. And they cream it in. So that just shows you. Whereas anyone can go and start a t-shirt business, but how much money are you going to make from a t-shirt business? You can start one in 30 minutes. Do you see where I'm coming from? So this is actually a really good thing. It's putting moats around our castle, our business, and it's making it harder to be a landlord. And when there's less landlords, the prices go up. It becomes more of a monopoly. And that's what we've always liked. I was speaking to my Spanish builder who's doing this property here, and he was saying to me, he said two things which really stood out. Again, just giving you a bit of a life lesson he gave me. He's 55 years old, he's got a cracking business, and he started out in real estate in Spain. He said when he used to go to auctions, there were 5 people. They were buying repossessions in the financial crash. He knew all the 5 people. If somebody wanted one property, they'd all put together, pay a little bit of money so no one else bid on the property. They all made millions. Okay, that's the power of monopoly. Okay, he then said to me, if you do this property, make sure you have some receipts from me. Don't pay me all cash because one day you might sell it. And I said to him, how am I going to sell this property and buy another one when the other properties now are 3 million plus? I don't want to spend £3 million to get another one, even if I sell this for 2 million or whatever it's worth, or 3 million and buy another one for 4. He said, how do you know in 3 years you're not going to be making 3 times as much profit? So he said to me, how do you know in 3 years you're not going to be making 3 times as much money from UK property? Basically, he knows what I do. And I thought, do you know what? That's a really valid point. I didn't think 10 years ago when I was starting rental, or even had 5 or 6 properties, I was making 5k a month. I never thought I'd be making 60k a month from rent. It might be a time in 5 years where I'm making 100 grand a month from rent. You can't predict. I used to get £500 a house. I'm getting £650 minimum a room now, and that's for the bad rooms. So that's the power of inflation and rental price increases. And he literally said to me that, and I stopped and I thought, do you know what? It could actually happen because it's already happened. From when I started when I was 20 to now, that's already happened. So imagine in 5 years, it could happen again with the way things are going. And there's so much more changes now in the market. It was an unheard of market then, actually, and it wasn't glamorous to be a landlord. And the other thing is, the property news was always on the property pages. Now, all these news, you know, the Renters' Rights Act, they're on the front pages. And why? Because housing is in such demand in the UK. There's a shortage, the population is growing, there's 20 tenants for every 1 property. So, of course, it's going to be on the front page. Home ownership, first-time buyers, the average first-time buyer is over 34 years old. So it's just crazy, and I can actually see a time in a few years or 5 years when I will be making double, and so will you. If you stay in the business or start the business today, follow these rules. Buying location first, guys, location first. Buying the best areas, set the rents high. Don't listen to other estate agents who are lazy, who are going, oh no, it's going to take us a month to rent this. Doesn't matter. That's my key advice to you guys. And that's the key loopholes. There's other loopholes I would go into, maybe on the next video. Stay tuned, I will delete it straight afterwards though, because we don't want to be putting it out there and attract all that negative attention. But the key, there's no point having loopholes if you're not following the key principles first. which is reducing your risk from tenants in any way possible, which includes buying in great locations, not renting to the average tenant, doing all your checks, doing social housing, etc., etc. Get the cash flow steady every month. If it's 5k, every month is 5k, not 4.5, not 3k, not 1 month they haven't paid. If it's 10k, it's 10k. Every month, and then you know if you're getting 5k a month clean, you know every 5 months there's 25 grand there, you can get a new property, and you build a portfolio like this, and you slowly increase the rent, you pull out the equity, you buy again, etc., etc. And that's how you build a portfolio. And for the bigger landlords, we're refining your portfolios now, so you can come out with 10k a month clean. Every 2-3 months you buy a new property, you do exactly the same. I just want you to buy in better areas, guys. So I hope that all makes sense. Let me know your comments, what you think about the future of the UK property market. I know it looks quite bleak at the moment. It's all in the news. All the landlords are selling. Remember, guys, the landlords who are selling are the ones who are 50 years old and likely made the money you want to make. You know, they've been through the easy times where you could kick someone out by knocking on the door. They've made hundreds of thousands, if not millions. Of course they're going to sell. You have to retire at some point, you know. So remember, Warren Buffett said, don't save all the fun for old age. So don't let that put you off. The younger guys watching this, is your turn is coming. Okay, you just need to operate smarter now compared to them, but the world's changed anyway, and pretty much the same in every business, to be fair. There's more regulation, especially under Labour, but we can't see a time where the rents are going to decrease. Can you? Can you see a time when property prices are going to decrease? They said it after COVID, they said it recently. It's not happening, guys. It's going up. Even in the latest figures now, with all of this, property prices are still going up. So stay tuned, guys, and catch you on the next video. Guys, here's a bonus loophole. So, as you know, I've probably banged on about it enough now. A lot of the rents I get are 6 months in advance, 12 months in advance from Hong Kong tenants, wealthy Chinese, Nigerian students coming to Manchester. Labour have decided in their infinite wisdom to ban this, so now there's a limit of how much rent you can take in advance. I think it's 6 to 8 weeks. How is this going to affect us? Well, obviously, we want to be secure. We're renting to tenants who can offer this, but now it's illegal to take that. So how do we get around it? One of my loopholes is there's nothing in the Renters' Rights Act which prohibits a tenant from being in credit with you. A credit balance can be built up. So literally, a tenant can go, I want to add some credit to my rental account balance. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to load it up with 2k. That's how we're going to structure it. So they load up 2k credit. There's nothing to stop them if they want to load that. We just can't ask for it, and we can't structure it as rent in advance. So it's literally credit on the account, and obviously it gets deducted from the rent as a credit account works. So it's one of the loopholes, guys, and we're implementing that as soon as possible. As soon as the Renters' Right takes effect, we'll be implementing that. And if anyone comes and goes, oh, you're not allowed to do that, we'll say, well, it's not 6 months in advance, it's a credit account. You know, if I want to ring up my utility provider and prepay, there's nothing, they're not going to say no, are they? So that's how we're doing it, and we're having a little informal chat with the tenants going, are you prepared to put some credit on your account? It's fine if you're not, and if you're not, then we might just go, well, we'll let you know if it's still available. So one of the loopholes, guys, I'll be dropping loopholes every week from now on until this act comes into force. So subscribe and see you on the next one.